DNA genetic traces mysterious origin of Native Americans to Middle East and ancient Greece. And you'll see a map showing the haplograph groups from the Middle East and Greece, and especially Greece, ancient Greece and Minoans of Crete, around the Great Lakes region, and also in Iceland. So basically it shows us that they had their shipping companies making those routes along the British Isles, Scandinavia, Iceland, Greenland, and then down towards the coast of eastern coast of North America, Canada. So this is what they found in the DNA. Tara McIsaac from Epoch Times reports this. The idea that Native Americans are descended from ancient Hebrews, Egyptians, or Greeks has been a controversial one for hundreds of years. James Adair, the 18th century settler who traded with Native Americans for 40 years, wrote that their language, customs, and social structures were similar to those of the Israelites. He wrote his book called The History of the American Indians. The History of the American Indians. It's a very difficult thing to divest ourselves, not to say other persons, of prejudices and favorite opinions, and I expect to be censored by some for opposing commonly received statements, sentiments, or for meddling with a dispute agitated among the learned ever since the first discovery of America. In more recent years, similar observations by Dr. Donald Panther Yates have even met with what Yates described as quote-unquote hate mail from Indigenous Studies professors. It's commonly held that Native Americans descended from Mongolians. In 2013, a study published in the journal Nature magazine acknowledged that some ancient Europeans' ancestry is possible. The DNA from 24,000-year-old corpse in Siberia was analyzed. It showed no resemblance to Asian populations, only to Europeans, yet it showed a clear connection to Native Americans. But the mainstream scientific community is far from embracing the theory that Native Americans descended from ancient Middle East or Greek peoples, as Yates and some others have proposed. Well, the DNA can't lie, obviously, so they have to change their theory, but they don't want to do that. Yates is of Cherokee descent. He has a PhD in classical studies, and he founded the genetics research institution DNA Consultants. These three credentials have given him a unique perspective on Native American history as it relates to those ancient cultures, and how DNA testing can support the theoretical link. Let's remember also that the Native Americans also have the Greek key, that meander thing, right? The Greek key, which means boldness, gives you victory. And that Greek key is also found in Asia, China, Japan, Korea, okay? So the Greek key is from Greeks, obviously. So how did they end up with the Greek key? And also a lot of words in their languages, in Native Americans, having to do with Greek words. For example, Potomac is the Greek word potami, meaning river. Now, going back to this, genetic similarities. Native Americans are generally thought to fit into 5 genetic groups known as haplotypes, each named by a letter of the alphabet A, B, C, D, and X. Yates demonstrated in a paper titled Anomalous Mitochondrial DNA Lineages in the Cherokee, what he calls the fallacy behind many genetic analyses. The genetics say line A, B, C, D, and X are American Indian. Therefore, all American Indians are lineage A, B, C, D, and X. The fallacy in such reasoning is apparent. It could be restated as all men are 2-legged creatures. Therefore, since the skeleton we dug up has 2 legs, it's a human. It might be a kangaroo, though, right? Any divergence from the expected haplotype is usually attributed to an intermingling of races after European colonization, not to the genes that came with Native Americans from their origin. After analyzing Cherokee DNA, Yates concluded no such mix could have resulted from post-1492 European gene flow into the Cherokee Nation. So where do our non-European, non-Indian appearing elements come from, he asked. The level of haplogroup T in the Cherokee, 26.9%, approximates the percentage for Egypt, which is 25%, one of the only lands where T attains a major position among the various mitochondrial lineages. Yates focused on haplotype X for its relative absence in Mongolia and Siberia, and a recently proven center for diffusion in Lebanon and Israel. In 2009, Liren I. Slush at the Israel Institute of Technology published a paper in the journal PLOS ONE stating that the X haplotype spread through the world from the hills of Galilee in northern Israel and Lebanon. Yates wrote, "The only other place on earth where X is found at an elevated level, apart from other American Indian groups like the Ojibwe, is among the Druze in the hills of Galilee in northern Israel and Lebanon." Cultural linguistic similarities. Though much of the Cherokee culture has been lost, Yates notes in his book Cherokee Clans, what can still be discovered about the legends hints at the ancestors who came across the sea and whose language was similar to ancient Greek. Okay? Cherokee says, what can still be discovered about the legends hints at ancestors who came across the sea and whose language was similar to ancient Greek. Some linguistic parallels have also been drawn between the Native American languages and Egyptian and Hebrew. The Cherokee's white demigod Maui may have his roots in the Libyan leader of a fleet dispatched by the pharaoh Ptolemy III before 230 BC. Now, Ptolemy was one of the generals of Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great lived about 330 BC. Okay? So a Libyan leader from Pharaoh Ptolemy, Pharaoh meaning being the king, Ptolemy had Alexander the Great's conquests and his kingdom, was divided into four generals, and Ptolemy was the one that took Egypt. Now, Yates explains that Maui is similar to the Egyptian word for god or navigator. Maui was said to have brought all civilized arts and crafts. He gave the Cherokee their title for principal chief, Amatoi or Moitoi, said Yates, which translates as mariner or admiral. He recounted a Cherokee Twister clan legend that named Maui's father as Tanoa. Yates said Tanoa may refer to Greek. Tanoa was the father of all fair-haired children and came from a land called Atia, he wrote. Atia referring to Attica, where we have Athens, Greece. His as a historical region encompassing the Greek capital Athens. Atia was said to be a place full of high alabaster temples, one of which was very spacious and was built as a meeting place for gods and men. At this place one found sporting competitions, games, feasts to the gods, meetings of great chiefs, and the origin of wars that caused people to spread over the Pacific. One could hardly invent a more fitting folk memory of Greek culture, Yates wrote. The Hawaiian word that epitomizes this lost world is kari, leisure ease, literally the same word in Greek for amusements. Yates notes numerous other linguistic similarities. According to the Kitowa Society elders, the Cherokee once spoke a non-Indian language, a Kintahopi, but gave it up and adopted Mohawk to continue to live with the Iroquois. The old tongue seemed to have many elements of Greek, the language of Ptolemaic Egypt and the ancient Judeans, he said. Adair noted linguistic similarities between Native American languages and Hebrew. As in Hebrew, Native American nouns have neither cases nor declension, wrote Adair. Another similarity is a lack of comparative or superlative degrees. There is not perhaps any one language or speech except the Hebrew and the Indian American, which has not a great many prepositions. The Indians, like the Hebrews, have none in separate and express words. They are forced to join certain characters to words in order to supply that great deficit, he wrote. A perspective from the past. Adair offers a perspective on the culture Yates cannot. Adair interacted extensively with the Native Americans hundreds of years ago, while their traditions were still thriving. Of course, the extent to which he may have misunderstood that culture as an outsider must be taken into account. Adair wrote, "From the most exact observations I could make in the long time I traded among the Indian Americans, I was forced to believe them lineally descended from the Israelites, either while they were a maritime power or soon after the general captivity. The latter, however, is the most probable. They had a similar tribe organizations," he said. "Their manner of delimiting time was similar, as was their custom of having a most holy place and their designation of prophets and high priests." He gave an example of a similar custom. Correspondent to the Mosaic law of women's purification after travel, the Indian women absent themselves from their husbands in all public company for a considerable time. He explains the absence of circumcision among Native Americans thus. He says the Israelites were about 40 years in the wilderness and would not have renewed the painful act of circumcision, only that Joshua enforced it, and by the necessary fatigues and difficulties to which, as already hinted, the primitive Americans must be exposed at their first arrival in this vast and extensive wilderness, it's likely they forebode circumcision upon the divine principle extended to their supposed predecessors in the wilderness of not accepting sacrifice at the expense of mercy. This might soothe them afterwards to wholly to reject it as a needless duty, especially if any of the eastern heathens accompanied them in their travels in quest for freedom. It seems the Cherokee people have had mixed feelings about Yates' work. While the Central Band of Cherokee website has posted a summary of Yates' research, some online comments indicate that some Cherokee have been reluctant to stand behind such claims or to involve themselves in this controversy. In writing about the Cherokee Paint Clan, Yates said, "Some of them practice Judaism, although United Ketowa, a Cherokee organization, elders vehemently deny this." And this is on Solask from the Epoch Times. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.